Sibling Ties, friends and family. Yes, I'm back again. You know what it is. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Ernest Shamden did it again. Now, y'all know we in season 4. Super excited. We in our interview season, and I get to bring you another lovely guest. I'm super excited to bring you this very well established person within mental health. She'll get into that and tell you like all her achievements and how established she is. So, you know, without further ado, to my Sibling Ties family of friends, I want to like to greet Beka George and let her, you know, go into her story and let us know all about her and how she overcame her struggles and everything and got to where she is. So, you know, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you. So just to give you a little background of who I am, my name's Beka. I am a mental health therapist and Christian soul care coach. And I also am a public speaker. So I've been doing mental health therapy for almost 15 years now, and just been in the field for a really long time and loved it. Always loved helping people, always loved being able to kind of hold the hand of people as they go through some of their hardest and most difficult things. Over the last, 12, 15 years, I've held a lot of different positions, done a lot of different things inside the mental health field, which I think gives me a really unique perspective, because I haven't just done one thing, but I've done a lot of different things. So I've worked in addiction. I've worked in prisons with sex offenders. I've worked with the victims as well, because I actually specialize in sexual abuse and sexually maladaptive behavior. So I've worked a lot with like trauma and those types of things. And then I've also, done things like supervising other therapists. So, I have like a whole gamut of things, private practice, those types of things as well. Recently, this last year, I decided that I wanted to open up a coaching company and not just do therapy anymore, because therapy is very limiting in what I can do. So, there's a state licensure that board that tells me what I can and can't do. And I obviously have to adhere to that. And so I decided to start coaching so that I could also open it up to more people than just in the state that I'm licensed in. And also so that I can kind of include some of my Christian beliefs in there as well. It's really hard to do that in therapy. So I am really excited to be able to, start building that business as well. It's only been about 9 months. And, the difference between therapy and coaching is that therapy dives a lot more deep into your previous trauma, right? So a lot of stuff that happened to you as a child or things that have affected you today. And then also you're going to have like a mental health diagnosis. And of course, if there's anything that's like crippling, like major anxiety or depression, those types of things, you're going to seek therapy. Versus coaching is more like, I feel unfulfilled in my life and I want to get better in this particular area or in general. So it's really fun both ways, but it is something I'm really passionate about. And then the speaking, I have a story about how I have overcome shame and my own healing story. And I love to share it. And so now I get to travel and tell people about my story in hopes that if there's someone else that's in a place of deep, dark depression or suicidal thoughts or in an abusive relationship like I was, then they may be able to like borrow that hope from me and get out of that situation. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's a lot. So
sorry, I talk fast, but I didn't want to take too much time.
I actually enjoyed it. You had mentioned that, you've been doing this for 15 years, and for me to think back 15 years ago, I don't even think I was thinking about like mental health myself. So 15 years ago, what was it that got you into it?
Yeah, so I had wanted to be a pediatrician for a long time as a kid. And then I just realized one day, I had some trauma myself as a kid. And I said, you know what, I really want to help other kids as they walk through this. And so, if I could be that person to someone, I want to be that person. And so I decided to start working with kids with sexual abuse. And that was kind of what I did in the beginning, and realized quickly that that was not for me. I was very depressed all of the time because I just felt like people were monsters. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't wrap my mind around it, especially after I had my daughter. So I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so after I had her, I was like, I can't do this anymore. But, I did always really just want to be able to help people and to let them know that there's hope. Even if you have a traumatic past or something that's happened to you that you feel like defines you, it doesn't have to define you.
And you had mentioned that you had a traumatic past. I wanted you to go into that because when I read your accomplishments, like it's hard for me to think that somebody who has a bachelor's in biblical studies, a master's degree in counseling, and also, you're going after your MDiv, that's master's of divinity, yes, as well, and also a licensed mental health therapist. For somebody to accomplish so much, what was the trauma that you went through, and how did you overcome that to, accomplish all of these things?
Yeah. So when I was 8 years old, I started kind of eating too much and started gaining weight, right? And so I've always been really chunky. I always had an issue with food, and started hoarding food. Started being really depressed about some things that were going on in my family. And my family's great, but I had gotten to the point where I felt mainly about me, about who I was really just gross to me. I hated myself. I hated everything about me. I started getting really depressed at a young age. And then I went through sexual abuse when I was in middle school. And that was really traumatic for me, obviously. And after that, I kind of started making really poor decisions for a while, because that's what happens a lot of times, right? Whenever you walk through something like that. And so then graduated from high school, graduated from college, got married really young, and went into ministry with my ex-husband. And we actually got divorced about eight years later. And that was also really traumatic for me, because I never expected divorce to be a part of my story. And especially because we did everything the way that we felt like God wanted us to do it, right? We went to Bible college together. We waited till we were married to have sex, right? Like we did all the things we felt like we were supposed to do. And then when we got married, and that all fell apart. And I never wanted my daughter to come from a broken home. My parents are still married. I wanted them to, I wanted that to be a part of her story. And so then I just ran far away from my calling, who I was, and just started living in my brokenness. And at that point, I met a man who started abusing me to the point where I was not sure I was going to be able to get out of it alive. I mean, it was really, really scary. It was really awful. And so then I started getting suicidal, started feeling like if I could just get my daughter to where she was 18 years old, then I'll just kill myself, because that's going to be the only thing that I'm going to be able to, survive from, or it's going to be the only thing that I'm going to be able to do. And she's going to have to, live with that after she's 18. Like I have to get her to 18 and then I can do this. And I just was in this place of deep, dark despair, even being a therapist, even being like knowing all the right answers of how to get out of depression. I was so deep into it, mainly from this relationship, that I couldn't see that I had any hope. I had gotten all the way up to 330 pounds was my heaviest. I've now lost over 120 pounds total. And in the last 8 months, I've lost almost 100 pounds just in this last 8 months. But part of it was just realizing that I am worth that, right? And so a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I got out of this relationship, drove from Indiana to Florida to get away from him in the middle of the night, what I could fit in my car, started my whole life over again. And God was so faithful to get me out of that and to take me to a better place. And so I started going to therapy myself. I started working on myself, and obviously, like all of those suicidal thoughts went away. Started realizing that there's hope for me again, and that there is a hope for a better story. And so now my life is completely different, just not even 2 years later.
Yeah, that's like really fresh. Like, wow, you said 2 years ago. I'm so glad that you didn't commit that, because I always think that it's better for us to be here rather than be gone. I actually started this with my sister because two of my friends that at my job had committed suicide, and it made me like look at things differently. Like, I went through like a time where I felt like I was like, why couldn't they call me? So I started feeling like less than myself. Like I thought I was a good friend. I started doubting how good of a friend I was within that as well, and just the thinking of it. Plus, at the time, you said that before you went through that experience with the person that was abusive to you, you and your ex-husband was in the ministry. And when I read through your bio, that was like one of the main reasons why I reached out to you, because I'm religious too. I believe in God and all that. And I never put the parallels together of church and mental health. Always, because you have the thinking of the people in church are the people that's okay, like they're all right. They go to church, they love God and they'll be okay. And when I had looked that up in your bio, I was like, wow, that is true. Like we do need that, because even though we go to church, it's not like we bypass hospitals. We still go to the hospitals to be treated. So why not mental health as well? So I know
that's one
that
of the reasons I'm passionate about telling churches and people that like it's okay to not be okay. Because I was in church and I was doing ministry and I was married to a pastor and all of these things, and I was falling apart and didn't know where I could go because I didn't feel safe to talk to anyone. And then after my divorce, I felt very ostracized by the church because it was very much like oh, well, you don't have a purpose anymore. You can't serve anywhere because you are divorced, right? Never mind that he went on to be a pastor just like nothing happened, yet the woman is the one that's like kind of ostracized more than the man, it seems. And so I remember thinking, why is it that my non-Christian friends are here for me but my Christian friends aren't? And it was very, very traumatizing for me. And so that's one of the reasons that I went far away from God instead of close to him, instead of realizing that people are just flawed and they don't know how to handle that. And so I want to, and if you would have looked at me at that time, people probably thought I had my life together. I owned my own practice. I was working as a supervisor at the time. Like I had a practice on the side. This relationship looked good from the outside, right? Like things looked good. Right. And I was falling apart on the inside. So I want to be able to tell people in the churches, it's not just about praying harder. It's not just about struggling alone. Like you can reach out and get help, and especially pastors and pastors' wives and people who feel that pressure of I have to be perfect at all times or I could lose my job, or I'm going to be, ostracized from the church or whatever. Like I am passionate about, no, like we need to create a safe place for these people.
Right. I agree with you on that. Within you raising your daughter while you were going through that, like were you like secluded? Did you like hide her from how you felt? Or now that you went through that, are you open about how your feelings were while you were going through that with her?
Yeah, so I tried to shield her from it as much as possible. I tried to always have a good face around her and always tell her, everything's fine and safe. But she knew when I was in that abusive relationship that, she never saw a lot of the abuse, but she would see things like, he had asked at one point, can I marry your mom? And she said no. And he said, why? And she said, because I hear my mom cry every night. And also because when we're out in public, you say, all these other girls are prettier than my mom. And I think anyone who marries my mom should think she's the most beautiful girl in the world. And so she knew things were happening, and she would tell her dad when she'd go to his house. We lived in Indiana, he lived here in Florida. She would fly to his house for breaks and she would tell him, I have to go back to my mom because what if she's not safe? So even though I thought that I was hiding it from her, I wasn't hiding it, and a lot of times we think that we're hiding it and we're not. And so now I'll tell her, like, I'm so sorry, baby, that I stayed in that position for 2 years with this man that made you uncomfortable, even though, he would have never touched her because he knows that would have made me snap and I'd have killed somebody. But he, he did hurt me in front of her, and he did hurt me. Like, I mean, even though she didn't see a lot of it, she heard it, and she knew that I was being hurt. And so I will be open now about the things that I did wrong. And I'll tell her, like, I'm sorry that I broke your trust. And I'm sorry that I didn't completely keep you safe emotionally. And, I'm sorry that I was so scared and fearful that I didn't know where to go and how to get help. And then I'll tell her things like, mommy was in a really bad mental place and I didn't get the help that I needed. And this is what happens when we don't reach out to people, and also when we believe the lies that the enemy tells us instead of believing the truth of what God tells us. So she's a great kid, but she sees, the struggle that I've gone through in the last couple of years to get up out of that.
Well, she sounds like a very, very intelligent young lady.
She is,
just for the point that she can point that out, that, not to make her mother available to somebody that she doesn't care for. That was like very crazy. That's very like, we don't think that kids are seeing or they're open to what's going on, but they obviously are. Within that, I wanted to ask you though, like, why do you think it's such a negative, like, stigma with the church?
I think
mental health. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I think it's mainly just because people want to believe that God is going to heal everything naturally, and he absolutely can. I mean, there are people who have depression and God heals them immediately, absolutely. But it's just the same as like cancer or anything else. There are people who have cancer and God heals them. But then there's people who also have to walk through chemo and who have to walk through, whatever radiation and treatments, right? And so we have to recognize that, God doesn't always heal us just like that. It doesn't always look like the way that we think it should. And so there's a lot of people who just tend to think like, if you just pray harder, they think that everything's a spiritual issue. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of things that are. I mean, there's a lot of things that people say are mental health issues that are just pure demonic, right? I mean, they just are. But there are also things that people say, oh, you just got to pray harder and just pray away the anxiety. And God says, cast all your fears on me, you know, or all your cares on me. And it's not always that easy. Like sometimes there are like actual chemical imbalances. Sometimes this is easy as you are lacking a certain vitamin. I had a client find that out this week where she had a diagnosis for years and couldn't figure out what was going on. All these people told her to do certain things. And I suggested like, hey, go get your blood work done to see if there's any deficiencies. Found out that she was majorly deficient in like 4 or 5 different kinds of vitamins, took it, and all those issues are gone. So, you know, recognizing that sometimes it is a physical thing, sometimes it is a chemical thing, sometimes it's a mental thing, and then other times it's spiritual. So I think it's really just the church wanting to think that everything is spiritual. And then also the church sometimes, not always, there's some churches that are great. My church is amazing at this. But there are some churches who also want to stay on a pedestal. They want to pretend like their stuff doesn't stink, right? And that they are cooler than everybody else. And they want to, I always say, don't judge somebody because they sin differently than you. Everybody sins. And yet we act like it's different because it's a different, you know, than the way we choose to.
Right.
So I think that people want to have this like high horse of like, I have my life together. Why don't you have your life together? And that sometimes ends up, the judginess comes from Christians a lot of times, which is really heartbreaking because that's not Jesus.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's just, I do think that that's a tremendous story to think, because, you know, to be scorned by the church and still keep your faith and come back, you know, to the church. I do believe that that's a very, very, very great, you know, tremendous thing. My question, like, you know, I always had this question because I'm always curious. Like I said, I'm not a person that deals with depression. But, you know, I do have asthma. And I know, like, when I was diagnosed with asthma at a young age, they told me that this is something that you're going to deal with for the rest of your life. Do you think that that's depression as well? Like, if you go through these things, like how you went through that traumatic experience and, you know, you dealt with your depression and through those, do you think that's something that you're going to deal with for the rest of life? Or do you feel like it's something that you can conquer and it'll be done with?
I think every person is different. And I think there are some people who, you know, have issues that they deal with forever. And then there's other people that just have those situational depressions, right? Where it's like something based on a situation that happened. And so, you know, it's not like a cut and dry answer. You know, I don't think that my depression is going to be around forever. I think that it was very, very much about me not being in alignment with who God called me to be. And I went far away from him, you know? And so I wasn't going to be happy. I wasn't going to be fulfilled because I wasn't where God told me to be. And so I've never really had dealt with depression besides, you know, when I was in places I wasn't supposed to be, or when I was a kid and felt like I couldn't, you know, express that I was so unhappy with myself. So once I started getting healing and started recognizing I need healing in these areas, you know, I haven't needed depression meds. I haven't needed anxiety meds. I went off all PTSD medicine, everything. So I do think that it's absolutely possible to move past that. But then there are also people who, you know, they have to be on it forever, and that's just a part of their story, you know. But if they learn to control it as best as possible, they learn to have as many coping skills as best as possible, a support team, then they usually can manage it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, you know, because just like I said, that it was amazing that, you know, 15 years ago, you decided to step into mental health, because it's not something that's like talked about. Like it's something that everybody, I believe everybody deals with depression or mental health issues on some type of scale. Just depends on if you can handle it better than others. But, you know, it's something that's definitely not talked about. And I think that, you know, what you doing and spreading the awareness and making people understand that it's normal will, you know, try to alleviate the stigmas within it. And, you know, people that try to fight it in the dark, trying to let them know that it's normal that you go through that. You know, like I said, I do enjoy your story that you had and the perils and the triumph that you had within the story. So I'm not going to be too long. I want to let you go because I know you're kind of busy, but I have like 2 questions. Before I ask you my 2 last questions, I wanted to ask you, is anything else that you wanted to, you know, tell everybody, or anything else that you have going on?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that if anybody, feels hopeless or feels like in a place like you want to, reach out to me, I would absolutely love to connect. I'm not taking any new therapy clients just because I can only take therapy clients in certain states. So unless you're in a state I'm licensed in, it's not happening. So I am taking coaching clients though. So unless I would absolutely love to connect with people. I love making new friends, new connections. I love praying with people. So feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. My name is Bekah George. It's Bekah George. Also, if you go to my website, it's sheervisioncoaching.com, which is SHEAR Vision Coaching. If you go under contact tab and fill out your email and just put that you heard about me on this podcast, I'll give a free 30-minute consultation just to see if we're a good fit and see how I can help you and just kind of connect with you. So feel free to do that as well, or find me on Instagram at Sheer Vision Coaching.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, that's beautiful. All right. So the one thing that I wanted to ask you, because like I said, I do love to inform myself more on this. And, I'm pretty sure that we have the Sibling Ties family and friends. We love to stay informed to help other people, even if we're not the ones that go through it. Like, is there what is there like a course, a book? What do you think that the person that doesn't understand what the person goes through, what can they do to better, give a understanding on what they're going through?
Yeah, so I definitely would suggest reaching out to someone who knows a lot about mental health, whether that's a coach or a therapist or someone who's also been through it, and just be like, hey, how can I learn more about depression? There's also books out there. I don't have any particular ones to suggest, but there are books out there that say basically how to love someone through depression. To be able to support them. But really it boils down to asking questions. So as a therapist, as a coach, one of the things I'm trained in is asking the right questions. And a lot of times we don't ask other people questions and we don't ask ourselves enough questions. So ask people, what do you need from me right now? How can I best support you right now? Are you feeling supported by me? Especially if it's someone who is a spouse or a parent or a child, someone who's a close connection to you. Ask them those questions because maybe you feel like you're doing all of the things to support them and they're sitting there like, don't feel supported at all. Okay, well, tell me how I can support you. And they may not be able to communicate that. So then maybe you go into some suggestions. Would this help you? Would this make you feel maybe some more supported? And if they're in deep depression, they may not be able to answer that. In which case, you may have to make suggestions to them. Hey, I would love to go with you to get help. I found some people who I think would be a good fit for you, and just find therapists in the area, that you can go in and just be there with them and make sure that you don't send them alone, and just say like, I want to be here with you. I want to support you in this. Let me help you get some help.
Wow, that actually helped me because I guess it's the man in me. I always try to let me just fix it, but I think it is better if we ask, what can I do to fix it? Ask and make sure that I'm doing the right things while I'm doing this. So, I'm definitely going to put that in my mental Rolodex.
Ask questions and ask, like, even that works in relationships too. Like am I loving you well? Right? Am I taking care of you well? Am I serving you well? Like asking those questions are just so easy, but people don't do it.
Right.
And so it's like, because I could sit here and try to love you, every way I know how, but if you're not receiving that love, then then we're at an impasse. So asking like, do you feel loved? Do you feel supported? Do you feel X, Y, and Z? And then asking yourself those questions. Do I feel loved? Do I feel supported? Do I feel encouraged? Do I need anything emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? So that you don't have to wait until you are sick in bed and can't get up because you feel so depressed. Hey, you know what? Like it's been 10 weeks I've worked straight. I should probably take a day of rest, So you take inventory of your emotions so your emotions don't take over for you.
So, my last question before you go, so like, 3 to 5 years from now, what will Beka George be doing within the mental health, space? What will you be doing 3 to 5 years? What's the goals?
Yeah, so I do exactly what God tells me to do. I just listen. But I, Lord willing, believe that I will be speaking. That's one of the biggest things that I really want to do is grow my speaking career, speaking to churches about how to close this gap, right? Speaking to women about really like helping them in their story, speaking about shame. So I'm writing a book right now that's called Out of the Pig Pen, My Journey Out of Shame. So I'm hoping that book plus some other books will be published by that time, and that I will be probably selling some courses as well online, just, because I probably won't have a lot of time for one-on-one. So it'll be more of, here's some courses that you can take. But I really want to travel, share my story, talk about how people can get rid of shame, because shame holds people back so much.
Wow, that is big. Well, I when that book comes out, I guarantee I want to get a book, and I hope that you sign it for me. Put it on there.
Absolutely, I got you.
No doubt, I would love that. And before we go, I did say that was the last question. I know you said you can only coach people that's within your state.
Yeah.
Is coaching only for the people that deal with depression? Can a person that doesn't deal with depression can they be coached as well?
So that was for therapy. So I can only do therapy with people in the state of Indiana, because when I moved to Florida, I have not gotten a license in Florida yet. So Indiana is where I'm licensed at. So it's the only place I can do therapy. And so I do everything telehealth with Indiana clients right now. But coaching you can do across the board. And coaching is less for depression and more for I want to just level up in every area of my life. I want to do better, right? I want to do better in my relationships, or I feel unfulfilled, or I feel like I have to, I can't wait until Friday comes every week because my life feels so daunting. That's more of what coaching is for versus, extreme depression, anxiety, those types of things need to be with a therapist.
All right, I got you. Yeah, no doubt. I definitely do appreciate the time that you spent with us. I definitely do appreciate hearing your story.
Thanks for having me.
You've helped me, go even within my relationship and my life, that I'm gonna start asking more questions. I'm gonna definitely ask more questions and try to be more helpful. I thank you again. I wish my big-headed sister was here, but she's not here. But
hopefully we'll connect at some point. I'd love to meet her.
Oh my goodness, I would love that if sometime down the line we could do this all over again. I would love that, because she actually just had her book published on depression as well. So
wow,
I definitely would love that. I tell her all the time she's my favorite superhero.
Oh, cool.
But thank you again, Miss Beka George. I appreciated this time that with us. And Sibling Ties, Friends, and Family, we have another addition to the family, Miss Beka George. I will definitely put her handles within this video so you guys can see it and go to her website and everything like that. And we thank you. We definitely thank you. You know what I'm saying? It was definitely a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
All right, no problem.